Okay, so I've been in the furry fandom for 10 years. I'm currently bordering on 22, and my first introduction to the furry fandom was probably when I was about 12. So, of course, as soon as you learn what furry is, for most people on the internet when they're 12, their first thought is, oh my god, I need to make a fursona immediately. But being 12, I also did not have a frontal lobe, so I immediately went to one of those fursona generation websites. I don't know if it's still up. You know, I'll look for it when I'm editing this. And what came up was an interesting description, and I took it and I roll with it. And as you will see, it stuck with me for about 8 years of my life. But you know, we veered off in interesting directions. So I think this will be an interesting trip down memory lane. So we're gonna go through it. We're gonna go through my blunder years as a furry. We're just gonna be honest with ourselves. Alright, let's see where this goes. Okay. Okay. Okay, this was roughly 2014, about 10 years ago. I honestly want to say maybe it was 2013, but I definitely remember drawing this in 2014. First of all, we're all drawn to it. The t-shirt that just says gay. It was a choice. It was a fashion statement. Second of all, the chicken scratch of my line art. I wasn't really confident with doing line art. Honestly, I still am not confident with line art. So when I was 12 years old, I just said, you know, I'm just gonna scribble with this disgusting pen with no pen pressure, and I think that will look pretty good. So I think this was one of the first times I drew a furry knowing it was a furry. It doesn't look too bad. You know, it could have been worse. Do I think that looks like a goat? No. The hoof hands are really kind of was getting me, because I wasn't doing hoof hands, I was just doing straight hooves. Blocks of cheese on arms. The floating eyeballs, cool creative decision, was not my idea. That was from the fursona generator. The fursona generator said a goat with eyeballs surrounding it covered in slime. Didn't even bother hitting refresh. First time, that was it. And I had this one for a surprising amount of time. This was from 2014, 2013 to 2016. And in 2016 I decided, okay, let's switch it up. Pretty consistent with the last design. The eyeballs were staying. Still kind of have the block of cheese hands, but at least there's some definition in the hooves. This was really like a sign of the times. This was like Tumblr Vaporwave peak, which is why I had pastel pink, pastel grunge. Pastel grunge was everything I wanted to be. I now think it is hideous, personally, but I was obsessed with pastel grunge, and so I thought my fursona needs to be pastel grunge. My hair did not look this good in real life. It looked terrible. I still think we're bordering on like canine here. This does not look like a goat, but at least the goat now has horns. I think that's a pretty good improvement. This fursona lasted about 1 year. That's how long it took me to grow out of pastel goth, pastel grunge. And so I thought, I need to redesign my fursona again. This, oh my god, how old was I? I was like 15 when I redesigned this one. You can see my art got a little bit better. It looks more like a goat than it did before. I mean, I was like doing the long ears now, and the horns. The hooves were still there. It just looks more like a goat in general. This was like peak art hole, and I was like obsessed with the color pink, everything pastel. It didn't suit me, but every single phase you have when you're a teenager gets translated into your fursona, which is honestly probably a good reason to have a fursona when you're a teenager, because if I wasn't doing this to my fursona, I would be doing this in real life and humiliating myself. This one lasted 3 years. I drew this like 2 or 3 times. I was a furry by definition. I liked anthropomorphic animals, and I liked taking pictures with fursuiters at cons. I was in the middle of high school, and when you're in the middle of high school, you are extremely terrified about having interests that are slightly weird. So I was not really indulging in this side of me. This design did not last 3 years because I thought it was the shit. This lasted 3 years because I drew him 3 times and then it just completely left my mind. And then in 2020, I did another redesign. In 2020, late 2019, early 2020, I was becoming more alternative. I was kind of growing out of the teenage phase of caring what people thought about me, which also meant that all the internet stuff that I used to be obsessed with when I was younger, I got obsessed with again. The pandemic did not help, and I was like, okay, well, let's become a furry again. So I decided I was gonna ask my friend, who is an amazing artist, if she could help me completely revamp my fursona, because as you can see, there is a big difference between what my aesthetic was and what it was at this point. So we did this lovely little, goth goat moment. I know that like demon goats are a trope in the furry fandom. I love them. Once again, this only lasted a year, although the next redesign isn't really as huge as the other ones were. I kind of wanted to move towards something more furry-ish, if that makes sense. I liked this, but I didn't like that it was so human. I wanted to kind of move more towards animalistic, if you get me. So in 2021, we moved to this design of Cordelia. She's now more like blue tone. She still wears clothes, but optional. She's got more pronounced goat legs, bigger teeth, bigger eyes. I'm a huge fan of this design, but this again lasted like a year and I still wasn't satisfied, and I went to my lovely artist friend and I said, can we make Cordelia even more of like an animal? I was obsessed with like horror themed furries. I was obsessed with Beauty of the Base fursuits, and I wanted something that was more monster-y. This was like moving away from who I was as in a fursona and more a horror movie antagonist. We went from kind of a nice humanoid goth goat to horror monster, huge goat that will rip you open with her claws. And I loved that vibe. The red accents, the red teeth, the red claws, the red hooves, just I love this design so much. And this is actually current Cordelia's design. She has not changed past this point. Cordelia is no longer my fursona, technically. She's one of my furry characters, but she's not technically my fursona because I feel like I moved so far away from her being a representation of me. The main reason I moved away from Cordelia being my personal fursona was 2 things. The first, she is an extremely complex design and I honestly love her for that, but the issue is that I have a hard time drawing her just because I feel like I never do her justice. I try to sit down and I try to draw her, but my art style just isn't good enough to encapsulate her. I also feel like there's such a small percentage of horror furry artists. If you know any, please tell me, because I would love to get some more art of Cordelia. The second reason I moved away from her being my personal fursona was because I wanted to have a fursuit one day, and I was going through the logistics of Cordelia. Look at her, she's huge. She's a huge mane and a huge back and huge claws. I can't really get her as a head only. Her huge head with her huge horns and her mane would look ridiculous on my tiny 5'3" body. She would have to be a full suit. I would just have to commit and she would just have to be a full suit. But the only artists that could pull her off, in my opinion, were Beauty of the Base and some other horror fursuit based artists. A Beauty of the Base full suit is a bit expensive. So I thought, let's move away, something simpler. I would love a Cordelia full suit in the future when I am rich and famous, but currently I would like something a bit simpler, something that represents me more, and something that can be translated more easily into a fursuit without me spending tens of thousands of dollars. So in 2023, I finally decided I'll make a persona that's a bit more me. I'm not a lovely huge monster in real life, so I was looking at what animals had like a similar facial shape to me. Got kind of a round, wide face. I got red panda back pretty consistently, so I was doing this kind of style. You know, I'm into B-stars, so I thought I'll do B-stars kind of persona, very representative of me. This is an outfit I wear, this is a bag I have. I was going from one extreme to being Cordelia, who was a huge monster, to the other extreme where it is literally just me. But I had this for a while, I liked it. My main love for this design was the beady eyes. I always just loved beady eyes on personas. I loved Haru in V-Stars because she has the tiny eyes in the manga. I really wanted to kind of steal that for my design. But about halfway into the year, I was like, I want to have big paws, I want to have a bigger tail, I want to be more furry. So I thought, okay, we will keep the red panda, we will keep aspects of this design, and we're just gonna go big with it. And that brings us to now with Clover. She is definitely everything I loved about the last design, just turned up to 100. I love her huge tail, I love her huge paws. She's nice, she's soft. I think this was a good place to round off. I hope I don't redesign Clover because I feel like this is a great place that I've ended up, and also I have commissioned a partial suit of her, so if I change her design then I'm gonna be spending more money. Her huge tail is my favorite part. Luckily my maker is amazing, so this tail is probably the same width and same height as me. All in all, I just love Clover. Love being able to see the progressions of all my personas. It's like seeing someone grow up from a goat to a monster to a very cute red panda. I know most people have one persona and they stick with it for their entire life. I think the issue was most people join the furry fandom when they're like late teens, early 20s. So when they decide on a persona, their personalities don't really change that much. But because I had my first persona when I was 12 and I am now almost 22 years old, I have gone through a lot of personality and style changes, and I feel like I'm at a point in my life now where I've been consistently the same. So I feel like this persona design will stick around for quite a while. But that being said, I love all of my past personas like they're my little children. One day it would be lovely to draw them all together, though that might look really funny, especially my first one. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was unscripted. I thought I would just pull up this PowerPoint and just say whatever. I'm not used to talking into a microphone. Thank you so much, and I hope we can do this again. Goodbye.